Is great. Welcome to IdeaLab. As we get settled, please open up your chat box and type in your name, your organization, and department, and tell us why you came today. What's your reason for learning with us today? Again, we're really glad you're here, and it's fun to see all the names as pop up. Friends from across the country joining us today. So again, I'm Michael Davis with Durham County Strategic Initiatives team, and we've got a couple other presenters who are going to introduce themselves in just a second. But whether you're a first-time attendee or a long-time IdeaLabber, we're really glad you're here. Welcome. This is our third session virtually, and as you know, we've been around since 2015, getting employees from the city of Durham and Durham County together to learn about innovation and continuous improvement together, and really to create relationships and break down silos between our organizations and our departments. Take a deep breath with me. It's been a crazy year. You can do a couple of those if you want. I may do some more throughout. It's been a nutty year, guys. The pandemic has pushed us to go virtual, and there's some beauty in that because it's allowed us to bring in friends from around the state and the country. That's pretty awesome. Again, no matter where you're from, what you do, we're so glad you're here to learn with us today. This is a community of learning around innovation and local government. Again, I'm Michael Davis, and I'm going to turn to my co-conspirators, Sherry and Shannon, and let them introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, I'm Sherry Metcalf with the City of Durham. I work in the Office of Performance and, oh my gosh, I need to take a deep breath. I don't even know where I work anymore. I work in the Budget and Management Services Department under the Office of Performance and Innovation. And I'm very excited to be here today with Shannon and Michael to bring you some hopefully helpful and useful information moving forward.
And I'm Shannon Delaney. I work with Sherry over at the city in the Office of Performance and Innovation as a design and performance strategist.
Thanks, y'all. Two excellent co-conspirators today. It's been a real joy to work with both of them on this. So IdeaLab, we've always aimed to be relevant to the current moment while pushing our organizations to think ahead, think big, think forward, right? We did that in April with our first virtual session. It was about innovation in the pandemic, and we had perspectives and speakers from across the country. We came back in June and we did it yet again with a racial equity session, and it took on even greater meaning and relevance in the wake of George Floyd's murder and civil unrest that we've experienced all across our country. And for this IdeaLab, the three of us really were contemplating, okay, how can we be relevant to the current times? How are we doing our work right now? And how could we all stand to make our virtual work more dynamic and collaborative and visual? So we know that many of us, we scrambled into the telework thing, working from home, and we recognized as the three of us put this session together that we could all stand to learn, again, ourselves included, right? Some tools and ideas on how to make our meetings and project work more dynamic, collaborative, visual. And so it's not easy to do. This stuff takes real intention and practice, but we think it's the right thing to push for. So that's why we're here today. Shannon, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would drill down in is today we're here to celebrate the visual. We tend to downplay the visual as being inefficient or maybe a decorative luxury to our work, but actually we think we do a great disservice to our work by keeping visualization an afterthought. So we would just like to make the strong case today that not only can it increase our effectiveness, but we can acknowledge that we're all naturally visual creatures, and we don't have to be self-proclaimed artists or designers to explore all kinds of ways to tap into that.
Thanks, Shannon. Well said. So the path ahead for today. Right now, obviously, we're getting settled. We're going to move into some core content, probably about 15 minutes of that, trying to keep it nice and quick for you guys. Then we're going to transition to 4 special guests from the city, the county, and we're going to the middle of the country to Denver, Colorado as well today, to hear some case study examples of visualization in their departments and organizations. Then we're going to do some breakout group activities I think you'll really enjoy, and then we'll come back for reflection time. We'll get you out of here by 3 p.m. Eastern. Hold us to that. Okay. So our objectives for today's IdeaLab, we're going to learn about visual thinking tools and principles. We're all going to learn together. We're going to practice visual thinking with our colleagues. That's really where the breakout group comes in, the chat box. It's going to be highly interactive today. And we're going to give you time to reflect on what you learned today and what you might do differently in your own work to make your meetings and projects more visual. And that's what we always strive to do here with IdeaLab, is make this applicable to your work. All right. So as we enter this space, we ask you to agree to the following. One, we want you to please participate actively and be fully present. We know there's a lot going on in the world. You may have parents or kids in the background or spouses. We know if you need to step aside and take care of things, if you need to respond to an email, anything like that, it's okay. But we ask that while you're here, you be fully engaged and present, and use the chat and speak. This is going to be a hyper interactive session. If you feel comfortable, and we mean that, if you feel comfortable, please turn your video on. We'd love to see you today. And it helps with connections in this time of distancing. And please mute yourself if you're not speaking. And then we just ask that you embrace the spirit of learning today. It's that spirit of yes and, right? We're all here to learn from each other. We may disagree on some things today, and that's okay, but we ask that we do so in an affirmative spirit. Again, we're all here to learn. All right, let's jump in. Here's our energizer. Sherry's going to go ahead and put a website into the chat. Please go ahead and click on the link, open it up in your web browser. So I want you to think about this crazy time that we're living in, and answer this prompt. And you're going to post it in the Padlet link in the chat. What's something you've been doing lately to keep yourself sane, healthy? This could be mental, emotional, physical. COVID has been nuts, and we want to see how you're coping. For me, it's been running on our greenways. It's been journaling and like reflection time. It's been listening to music. Many of you know I'm a big music geek, and so I've been on a big, weird Steely Dan kick. There's something about a pandemic that makes you get into yacht rock. But again, I want you to go ahead and post something on the Padlet board, and you're going to see that this is a really interactive tool, and we're going to come back to it later today. So what are people posting? Shannon, Sherry, what do you see so far? Or what are y'all doing to stay sane right now?
I see a lot of, let's see, cooking, exercising.
Going on long walks. I like the ignoring my phone on weekends.
I need to work on that one myself.
Sitting in a hammock in the woods, which sounds heavenly.
You guys really play with the Padlet. It's a cool tool. You can post GIFs and photos, and you can interact with other people, and it's hyper interactive, which is why we shared it with you. We hope it's something, again, we're going to come back to it later in the session, but we hope it's something that you consider using with your teams and with meetings. It's pretty fun.
Wow, this is a lot, yeah.
Let's
I
see.
love the photos.
They're all popping up. I know we've got photos and pictures.
That's awesome. Anything else that is particularly resonant?
Just kissing my granddaughter.
Aww.
Oh, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, again, we want you to keep adding to this, keep playing with it. It's going to stay up for the whole time and even beyond. Yeah, so that's Padlet. Again, we're going to come back to it. So keep playing with it. All right. So let's see. Go on my next slide. Okay, so Shannon, Sherry, were we able to get the PDF working?
Yes, I will put that up right now.
Awesome. Okay, so we want your learning today to carry forward. We don't do IdeaLab in a bubble, in a void. This is about applying things to be better when we go back. So we built a reflection workshop for you, and Sherry's posting that in the PDF in the chat right now. Go ahead and just click it open.
Sorry, it's not there yet. Sorry.
I just posted
It's
it.
okay.
Oh, thank you.
It's coming. That's all right. But when that gets posted, go ahead and open it. Maybe you've already been working on it because we did send it out in advance. But if not, it's okay. There's going to be time at the end of the session to fill it out. And basically, this is a worksheet for you guys to think about your current projects and meetings and think about, again, how you might make those meetings, collaborations more dynamic, interactive, and visual. So we hope that's a tool you can take with you. Shannon?
Yeah. Let's see. So because this session is focused on how to get more visual in our work, we wanted to challenge everyone with another little practice today. And some of you may have already heard or used visual note-taking before. We're going to play a very short video, which I think Michael is grabbing now, and it's going to introduce the basic concept of sketch notes. So type in the chat if, by the way, if you've ever done sketchnoting or if you've heard of graphic note-taking before and if practiced this before. But we're going to invite you to take out your paper and writing tools and practice this way today.
All right. And Shannon, you're going to let me know if the sound doesn't pop up, right?
Yeah.
This is your brain. And this is your brain when you feed it the powerful combination of handwritten text and hand-sketched images placed on the page in an organized way with a few different colors. Your brain lights up at this. It can't help it. Why? Because we are visual creatures. More of our brain is dedicated to the processing of visual information than any other sense. And that is what makes visual note-taking, aka sketchnoting, aka graphic recording, such a powerful tool. And here's what you can do with that tool. You can use this powerful combination to enhance your learning, to become a better problem solver, and to get better at sharing ideas.
So that was a very quick and dirty intro. And we can probably do a whole session on visual note-taking, but we think the best way today is just to learn something by practicing it. So as Michael pulls up the slides here, I just want to encourage you to just try. Don't worry about being fancy. This is just for you. So if you're the only one that can tell that you drew a coffee cup, that is just fine. And I just want to ask the chat again if maybe I should pull it up here. It's hard to see multiple things going on. So some people have been doing sketchnoting. What's one word I think for the rest of us when we think about visual thinking or visual sketchnoting? If you could just like throw a word in there. Doodling. Yeah, that's a common one. It's interesting because there's some like overlap with doodling, but some distinct differences. Interactive. That's great. Post-it notes. Yeah. Prefrontal cortex. I love it. Time consuming. Yeah. That's good. Okay. So we're just gonna practice today. And Michael, I'm gonna throw it back to you.
Okay. Thanks, Shannon. Yeah. Keep adding to the prompt. We're curious to kind of get your thoughts on this. Yeah, so when we talk about visualization, we want you to see that at the city and the county, we're already doing a lot of this. These are some photos from some projects and teams from the last few years that we've had. And it also includes a training that we attended at Denver Peak Academy a couple years ago in the bottom right-hand corner. You're going to see a lot of sticky notes. You're going to see colors, pictures, images, and workboards that are highly interactive. And the point of this is just to show you that visualization can happen in person. It can happen virtually. Hopefully in the future, the vision is that we have, beyond this crazy pandemic, that it's going to be a combination of both the analog and the virtual. I really like this infographic. It's from kanbanize.com. Couple data points for you on why visualization is so important. The human brain processes visual information 60,000 times faster than text. And it makes sense, right? Think about a dense paragraph of text and then compare it to the same information that might be presented in an infographic. Maybe it's an infographic you see on Twitter, or maybe it's something that you see back in the old days in USA Today, right? When you make that kind of stuff, information, visual and graphically pleasing, it really helps our brains digest it much quicker. Yep. So in his book, Visual Meetings, David Sibbitt, check this out. It's on Amazon. You can get it ordered. It's really great. He lists 3 powers of visual meetings. And again, these all apply to our topic today. First, participation, visual engagement and visual cues. These cues and engagement, they increase participation. And people like to see, frankly, what they say captured visually and posted that way. Second, big picture thinking. If we use visualization, it's going to allow us to see connections between disparate ideas and different points, allows us to group similar ideas, and it's better than just talking them out because we actually get to see them. And third, visualization is really helpful for group memory. It gives us a chance to create like a product, an artifact, documents of our work in real time. And then when we have those good visual documents, we can remember them, we can go back to them. That's good for group culture and for our shared memory. So that they're the products we create in real time. All right, real fast, one more quick data point for you. And this is according to a study that's cited in the Harvard Business Review. You're going to get the link later. It found that this study found that virtual brainstorming, as opposed to in-person, actually improves creativity, where 70% of people would actually do worse with traditional in-person brainstorming sessions than virtual. And the article says that the why is that you can get more scale with virtual meetings and virtual brainstorming. You can get more people involved. Also, you have more anonymity in the virtual setting, so people may feel a little bit more comfortable sharing their ideas. Again, we're going to send out the full link later with the slides, and so you can read more, but thought that was really interesting to share. Shannon, we'll turn it back to you.
Thanks. So there's a few basic scenarios where we think visual thinking can really help us. The first is with yourself. It's just a way to get out the fuzzy ideas out of your head. It can be a really effective way to work through early drafts before getting feedback from others. When you're with your team, it's all those things and more. So it might help you organize the diverse opinions of your colleagues and establish alignment on a project or manage your work. And then there's plenty of other instances where visuals play key roles. It could be pitching to decision makers or getting feedback from community members. So just something to keep in mind as we go through the day. And I'm going to introduce some key considerations to making the best use of those visual tools in our work. And so again, whether it's by yourself or with your team or with others. And I also want to point out that we're using a lot of metaphor today, which is another great visual thinking tool. Metaphors and images tend to be stickier, and it can be a really good way to introduce a new concept by using something that people are already familiar with. And we use metaphor in our language all day long, right? So with that, this is our first big metaphor that we're going to be playing with. It's project as a stage play. So let's say you're planning your next meeting. Before you introduce a new visual tool, or really make anything, it's helpful to consider the context or set the stage. So we might think of one meeting as one scene in the play. And if it's a large project, you can consider how many phases or acts you have to work with. It could be a good way to scaffold the whole project. So then from there, you're going to figure out where you are in the plot. Like, what do you need to leave with today? What's going to help push the plot forward and get you closer to a desired conclusion, hopefully without too many plot twists. So once you know where you are and the goals that you have, decide who needs to be there. Maybe it's just you, it's a one-person scene. And if there are other actors besides yourself, think about who they are and what they need in order to support this work well. It's a really good idea to think about team dynamics here and how long people have been working together, how long they will be working together. And I know I'm kind of flying through this. I'm just gonna remind you that at the end we'll have a one-pager that we're sharing. So it has all this information on here for like an easy reference guide. So yeah, it's a good idea to think about whether what you work on today in that meeting, if it'll turn into deliverables that other people might use. So thinking about those goals early could save you time down the road by setting yourself up with just the materials that people outside of this room might end up engaging with. And part of setting the scene well is allowing for some good improv. So the better you can prepare your team, the more productive and comfortable your time will be together. And this is especially true if you are using new tools or even if you're using old tools in new ways. It's also an opportunity to think about what people might be able to contribute before the meeting and after the meeting. So this takes some thinking ahead and being intentional about what you need from your participants that day. And we'll see in some of the examples to come that digital work can really allow for much more flexibility. So it's not just with how we occupy space, but also time. Collaboration doesn't necessarily require meeting in real time, right? And a lot of these visual tools can be great containers for ideas and feedback and conversation to come. So after all of that, it's time to choose the props. That's the tools that folks will interact with. And so again, a good visual tool is just there to support your team to do their best work together. So how you use those tools is really up to what works for your team, given the context. And this is just a matrix to show some examples and diversity of uses, speckled with some platforms in there to paint your imagination. The different software that we have, oops, often there's different kinds of tools within those software. So for instance, we use Padlet at the start of this session in sort of a free form way, but it has other more structured templates in there as well. And so like Michael mentioned, we'll see and we'll use a few tools today, and we'll point to other resources, but we really encourage you to test and explore what works for your team in your context. And so, yeah, then by all means, share it with us because we'd love to hear about it. And while we're still on this page, the last thing I'll just point out here is the matrix Foursquare. It's another visual tool. It's fairly common. We probably used it in various ways in our work, but you can use it to compare and map out like pretty much anything from services to project challenges to different user personas. It can be just a really super helpful tool when you want to discern particular qualities of things. And I'm going to pass it back to Michael, but I just want to ask for folks in the chat if you've used any tools recently that you've found particularly useful or challenging in that way. So either way, we're curious what's working for people or what we've had difficulty with.
So it's like Chastity. Hey, Chastity. She posted in the chat Canva. Yeah, that's a great one. It's free software to do really complex graphic design kind of stuff. That's a great one. Any others that folks think about? Lindsay from Public Health said Jamboard. She used it recently with the Early Childhood Action Plan. Jess, her colleague, said the whiteboard function in Zoom. We've got Microsoft Paint, Visme. Lisa Miller. Hey, Lisa, she mentioned Canva too.
Yeah, Canva's awesome.
PowerPoint, absolutely. Like that, I mean, you can do some really cool stuff with that. I mean, even going back to like smart art and just using that as a canvas it's great. No, Mickey, Paint's not a joke. You can use Paint. Some of us do use it for editing, and some of us, even like myself, who tend to be a little bit technological Neanderthals, it's not a joke. We can use it. I'm picking on Mickey. He's my friend from our IT department. No, this is great. Thanks, guys. Keep posting them. All right.
Oh yeah, iPhone notes as well.
Okay, so Shannon, thanks for setting the stage. That was our first principle, and our second is keep it simple. So that means with visualization, we really want to create something that's clear and easy to use. Whatever you design, it needs to be really simple. So on the slide, I put a basic example. This is imagine a visual project board that maybe your team would use. And so in orange, those would be your completed projects. The green would be your current projects, and the yellow would be your potential projects, the ideas, the things that haven't even begun yet. Notice how we use color. Notice how we group like items together. We do this for a reason. It's simple, and it's a way to create structure and standards so that there's order. Otherwise, it's just a free-for-all, right? It's just really chaotic. And so it's important when you create that visual collaborative tool to have really also not just that structure, but clear expectations on when and how we want our team members and our collaborators to use it. So maybe if you had a visual project board like this, you would actually have a deadline that 2 hours before our weekly meeting, we need you to go and update your various projects. That just gives people a chance to review, but having those kinds of guidelines and structure definitely helps. Again, otherwise it can be really free form and kind of a little crazy. So as you think about design, we really want to make sure that we design things that are user friendly. And you saw that our pal Mickey from IT was on, and he helped us design this. He did a great job with it, by the way. But this is an example I wanted to share with you, because the point here, again, is that if you design something that's clunky or maybe hard to use, people won't use it. Again, I'm telling on myself here because this is my idea, and I'm going to use the F word, failure. This was a little failure for me. About 4 years ago, we were updating our strategic plan, and I had this great idea. It was going to work, right? Let's build a visual paper, visual place where each goal area, 5 goal areas in the county, can post their strategies and their programs and their measures. It's going to be great. Everyone's going to use it and love it, right? And so Mickey did an awesome job building exactly what I asked for, and it was great. But the problem is that unfortunately no one used it, and it's because in hindsight, I should have tested the concept first. And it gets to that tenet of human-centered design, and making sure that you get input from your users first. And so that's the lesson there. And Mickey, you're a good, but again, this one's on me because it was my idea. And, we learn from those things. I think we've gotten hopefully savvier with that. But again, we want to build things that are user-friendly.
I think your idea was sound, though. Use something visual to generate something that's usually boring and procedural. So
yeah.
I love that project, even though it wasn't used that much. It's still one of my favorite projects I've done in the county. So.
I do. Yeah, no, I do too. And I think next time around we'll do a test and kind of work through it. But I appreciate your grace and letting me share that example, because I think it's a good one. And So the next point is that although we're glued to our laptops right now, we want you to think about still pen and paper and pencil, right? Sketch out your ideas on paper. Back of envelope is fine. And then step away and come back to it and involve your team workers, your team members in tweaking it and improving it. You're not in this alone. They're going to help you create it, whatever your visual tool is, and help you better. All right. Krista, we're coming to you in just a second. Our third theme is around weaving in accountability. And it may seem simple, but it's really important that whatever virtual tool you design, it needs to have some accountability to it. That means you got to make sure that you're holding yourself and your team accountable to actually use the thing. And again, it's super simple. Make sure that you use your visual tools, not just during the meeting, but before and after. Make it a permanent fixture of your team. Again, that means weaving it into your team culture, your language, your practice. Talk about it all the time. Circle back to it. Give it a fun name. Make it something that your team gets energy and joy from and can't live without. Make it something they enjoy and not just an obligation that hangs on them. Weaving in accountability. I now want to introduce my friend, Krista Gibson from Cooperative Extension, who's going to lead off our case studies. And then she's going to have to hop off. So we're going to let her go through, and then we're going to see if there are any questions for Krista. But Krista, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks, Michael. So I am going to talk a little bit about a tool that we have used at Cooperative Extension called Mural. And I have the great pleasure at Cooperative Extension to work with a committee that we call our Communications Committee. And one of our big tasks every year is to create an annual report. And so we set about thinking about how we were going to plan for this annual report for 2021 when we can't get together and talk about our ideas. And I wanted to do two things in this meeting. I wanted to hear from my fellow colleagues how things went last year with their annual report, both in process and in the product. And then I wanted to collect their vision for the next year's report. And so I started thinking about how I could do that, and we came upon a tool called Mural. And I do want to point out that it's mural.co. If you go to mural.com, I think you get a Spanish language news channel, so that's not where you want to go. Mural.co. And Mural is an awesome tool. It is very similar to Padlet that you use today. The big difference, and the thing that I liked about it, is that it has all of these templates. So a lot of you have done some facilitation in the past, doing a lot of different, using a lot of different facilitation tools, like a fishbone diagram or something like that. You can go in there and you can type fishbone and you can find a template there. And so it's awesome to save you time, effort, stress when you want to facilitate with a particular tool that you know about in the real world. And so the first thing that we wanted to do was to look back at how things had gone the year before. And this was something that I knew exactly how I wanted to do it. I had in my mind what I would do in the real world, and I just looked in Mural to try to find a template that reflected that. And there was one right there. You can see it. It was called the retrospective template. And it just allowed me to take input on what went well, what didn't go well, and then what actions we needed to take to deal with the things that didn't go well. And this was very much like what you just experienced with Padlet. We went in, we all wrote on our little Post-it notes, we posted them in the correct columns, and we were able to collect all this great input that you see there. The second challenge I had was to think about what we wanted to do for the 2021 report. And this, I was a little less clear on what I really wanted to do and how I wanted to collect that input. And so in this case, I actually went into Mural and just went through all the templates that kind of seemed relevant to me to pick something that worked. And you see here, I ended up with a matrix. And so in this case, the tool actually helped me as a facilitator figure out what facilitation tool I wanted to use. So I knew what I wanted to collect was ideas about certain categories. What did my team want as far as content, design, format, things like that. So I used a matrix to sort of put on the left-hand side the things I knew I needed to do to create this report. But the top hand was a place for me to get input from different groups. And so I left that blank and came into the meeting and said, hey, who are the folks we really care about when they read this report, that they're happy with it? And so here we put our different audiences. So we have things like, or I can't actually see, it's too small for me, but I know we had like farmers, we had parents, we had families, we had county commissioners, all the people that are our stakeholders that we care about as far as what they think about our report. And so again, we just went crazy. You can see we got a lot of input there. People just posting notes about what the people they work most closely with would want in these different areas for the report. And so that's how we used it. I really enjoyed using the tool. I think it's great. I loved it most of all because, as who have done facilitation before know, you come away with 100 different little Post-it notes that you have to take back and write down what was said. Mural takes care of that for you. It saves whatever was input into the form for you, and then it also sends you a PDF, so you just have like a document where everything is already there and you don't have to rewrite it. The other awesome thing about it, if you are a nascent a facilitator, is that it actually has on the side steps for facilitation. So it's just like step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3. So it's an awesome tool if you're just learning how to facilitate, I think, again, in the virtual world or in the real world. My tips would be, though, that you start with people who love you. There is a little bit of a learning curve. We all saw it just now with Padlet, how people's Post-it notes were on top of each other. So you got to kind of learn to move your Post-it note gracefully and things like that. So you're really better off if you do it with people who have some patience for you the first time, so that you can kind of help learn how to use the tool with them. The other thing that I think was a real advantage for our group is that we have worked together before and we have used these kind of facilitation tools before. So there wasn't really such a learning curve in how to brainstorm an activity. The learning curve was just in actually how to use the virtual tool. And I think that was a really good thing, particularly for my first time using this tool. So I will just pause there and see if y'all have any questions for me.
So you guys can, thanks Krista for sharing that case study. Y'all can post your questions in the chat. I'm curious, as those get populated in the chat, Krista, how else do you think that you might use Mural in the future? Like, has this spawned other ideas of ways you may be able to engage with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I have part of my job is also facilitating groups for parents. And I have been really anxious about using something that's a little more complicated with folks that, again, I don't know as well. So my thought is like, I'd like to do one more trial run with my colleagues and just sort of make sure I feel good in the tool and then use it with my parents. And for that, I mean, it's just another way to keep them engaged. Like, I don't think in their case that we're trying to come to a decision or anything, but it's more a tool to just sort of make the class a little bit more exciting for them, because we're just sitting, on a Wednesday night together on Zoom. So I can think of a lot of ways that we could use it to have a little more fun together, but I need a little more confidence first.
Got it. One of the questions for you, Krista, is, do you find it useful to use such applications while also being in a call? Like, how do you kind of toggle back and forth, I guess?
I'm guessing maybe they're talking about people who just call into Zoom as opposed to those who are in the web browser. Is that what the question means?
I think so. That was posted by Your Majesty. That's creative. If they wanna turn their mic on and talk a little bit more about their question for Krista. There's another question. Is there a training tool that might be shared with a group ahead of use? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's actually, they do have lots and lots of videos and things on their website. I have to admit that I have very little patience for those kinds of videos. Like I just like to do. And so I didn't find it that hard to just go in and figure out how to play with it. But yes, there are definitely a lot of tools that you could watch videos on their website and whatnot.
Very cool.
Oh, in a call with participants, not just with anyone. So I think if I understand the question about your meologistes question, that that is another limitation, and that's another reason I haven't used it as much with my with our parents, because a lot of them are calling in, and even like some of them are using their smartphones with Zoom. And I think you could do it, but it would still be a little bit challenging to move your little Post-it notes around. So that is definitely a limitation. You want to make sure that everybody in your session is probably on a laptop or a pad or something like that.
And Krista, you're already getting recruited for Durham County Leadership Academy.
Oh, great. I'd be happy to.
We'll have to connect you. This is great. You're right, Peggy. Any other questions? I know we got to let Krista go. She may have time for one more quick question if y'all have it. All right. Well, her email information and contact information is going to be in the slides you're going to get after today. And so feel free to reach out to Krista. She's always helpful and wants to be supportive, and she can answer your questions after the fact. But Krista, we know you need to run for another meeting, but thank you for coming on and sharing your case study today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm sorry to miss the rest of this. The start has been so great. So thank you very much.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. So now I have the pleasure of introducing our friends Zach and Blake out of Denver. Zach has some great connection to the Bull City. He is a still a fairly recent, 2 or 3 years now, graduate of Duke's Sanford School of Public Policy. And he worked as our summer intern in the county manager's office a few years ago, and reached out to Zach to see if he could share a little bit, he and Blake, on what they're doing with Microsoft Teams around project engagement and tracking all the way out there, the city and county of Denver, Colorado. So Zach and Blake, you guys ready to take it from here?
Yeah, sure are. Thanks, Michael. Thanks so much for the introduction and for having us. This has been really great so far. Like Krista said, this has been really, really engaging. So I'm happy to contribute just a little bit, I hope. Yeah, so we wanted to talk a little bit about more just kind of how do you manage your quotidian everyday meetings, the typical stuff that you gather in your conference room for before COVID. How are you managing that and keeping those productive? And, you know, I really like a couple of the things that folks said before. You know, Michael, you started with your deep breath and, you know, holy 2020. And I guess I'm taking a little comfort in sort of our little opening idea here is that one thing has not changed post-COVID, I think you'll all agree, and that is that there are good meetings and there are bad meetings, and we all know what a bad meeting is, right? That there are a couple of flavors of really bad meetings. So many meetings could have been an email. You know, you get 15 people in a room for 45 minutes or an hour, and someone could have just written an email, and that would have saved tons and tons of time. We've all been in one of those probably this week. Another example of a bad meeting is when it's just one or two people talking at a whole group. And so I think for kind of our thoughts on what a good meeting looks like, I really love that metaphor from earlier, Shannon's metaphor about a project as a play and a meeting as a scene. That is just absolutely perfect, because you know what we wanted to talk about is basically this idea that a good meeting, it produces something that you didn't have before, that your group didn't have before. Basically, you know, you shouldn't bring your people together to have a meeting if it isn't going to advance something in some kind of tangible material way. And so the way we think about a good meeting is basically there needs to be work that goes into it. You need to set the stage, get people on the right page, everyone understands, and you all brought all this up before, but you know, get everyone on the same page, everyone knows why they're coming to the meeting. And then in that meeting, you come together to discuss and improve ideas. you would advance things or resolve questions that you had prior to the meeting. And then what we think is really huge, just like every scene in a play has its reason and its purpose, and it sets up what's to come. A meeting needs to set up what's to come. So a good meeting also produces an agenda moving forward, and it gives everyone to do ideas, what they're going to work on after the meeting. And then another thing I would say is that a meeting really, in many cases, a good meeting also produces accountability, so that you know that people are gonna leave that meeting, get some stuff done, and really advance what's moving on. So that's sort of just our sort of kind of founding theory: good meeting versus bad meeting. So Blake, you want to take over a little bit from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think before COVID, both Zach and I felt like we were lucky enough to have a set of really good meetings on kind of a continual cadence. We knew what was happening this week, what was going to happen over the course of a month. And COVID hits, and all of that kind of disintegrates all at once. And we all need to come back and identify how we're going to have these productive meetings in a virtual space. Because we don't have all of those touch points in an office setting that we used to have, where people are talking about projects, they're identifying issues, like small little issues that don't need a meeting, that we can just have a conversation about. And as Zach and I are researchers, sharing scripts, sharing snippets of code, talking about different ways of visualizing for an upcoming meeting. So all that kind of pre-work that we've organized, actually we haven't organized, that just kind of naturally occurs in an office setting, no longer exists. And so we just need to be much more intentional about how we kind of create this, what we've called lubricant for good meetings. And so part of this is doing the work to build visualizations to gain all, I think the previous, Krista was the previous speaker, talked about kind of gaining familiarity with all these kind of tools. You need people in your office setting that are going to delve into these tools, the toolbox, to be able to kind of bring these to the group in a finished product, and not just kind of have these big. Microsoft Teams is a giant, collaborative workspace that, people aren't going to be familiar with all the tools that exist with that environment. Somebody needs to kind of go in and curate that environment before everybody kind of jumps into that swimming pool.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. All of those sort of natural interactions that we have in the office that we kind of call the lubricant of a good meeting. What we tried to add some of these technological tools into those meetings before COVID. We were just asked by our leadership to start to do that, and we really found that was actually sort of a hindrance. People considered it annoying or intimidating, just another box to check, and really we didn't need that pre-COVID, because all of that sort of stuff was happening naturally. I mean, Blake and I literally sit next to each other when we're in the office. So 15 times a day, I look at his screen and help him with something. He'd do the same thing to me, and that just facilitated. So the question during COVID is, well, okay, how do we set about to intentionally create all those interactions, those things that were the meeting lubricants? How do we organize our thoughts, our products, our conversations, our files, the visual things that we produce that represent our work? How do we organize those all into one seamless virtual space that we can all interact with in real time? Sometimes not. Someone mentioned a few minutes ago, maybe sometimes you don't need a meeting. You set up a space well, and everyone kind of interacts in their own time to move a ball forward. So we really had to ask ourselves, how are we going to do that to get that to go back to the play metaphor, that before the meeting, during the meeting, after the meeting cadence, where you're always pushing something forward. And so compared with before COVID, when introducing technology seemed like sort of an annoying, box to check, what Blake and I pretty quickly realized for ourselves, and then sort of percolated out to our bigger team, is that technology, thoughtful use, careful use of the technology, was actually going to fill that gap that we were missing. And so we started to play with that, and we started to establish some norms of how are those virtual meetings going to go. And so, yeah, we've been making really good use, I think, of Microsoft Teams. Blake's actually going to share his screen, if that's okay, and just kind of give you guys a quick peek into how we've organized one of our big projects out of our office in Teams. And the point being, not that you need Teams per se, but anything that helps organize the meeting.
Is my screen being shared right now?
No. There you go.
All right, there we go. So one of the tools that we've kind of landed on that kind of facilitates the before, during, and after is what Microsoft calls their planner boards. This is also available free on the internet, called Trello. It's just a way of organizing and building cards that can show various information. But this has really allowed Zach and I to facilitate discussions in meetings without necessarily knowing exactly what our leadership wants to talk about at any particular meeting, but kind of organizes the thoughts just the same. And so on this board, we're using colors over here to identify. This is for our criminal justice transformation group out of the Director of Safety's office here in Denver. So we kind of have 4 principles that are guiding our work: equity, right-sized responses, responding to increasing gun violence, and this concept of the J curve, where many things produce a lot of our crime and few things have almost no crime, or many things have almost no crime. So that's kind of the core concepts, and then we can allow things that are more pressing to kind of float up to this upper left-hand corner where we're trying to get short-term things done, and then kind of our longer-term and pipe dream stuff kind of flows over to the right. And so if we're not really talking about a citywide response to gun violence in this meeting, we want to talk about cementing inmate voting rights. We can quickly pull up this card. It has all of the information necessary to kind of talk about that project, notes about the project, a checklist that can include to-do dates, attachments for the project. So, we have a comment train going down, and where we think that this fits within kind of the broader scope of the criminal justice transformation efforts here in Denver. Zach, is there anything else on here that you're seeing that has been really helpful for this group?
Yeah, no, I'll just say, so this planner board is really the sort of meat that drives that before, during, after cadence for a given set of meetings. But what's also really nice about Teams, and again, it doesn't have to be Teams, it's just any sort of thoughtful sort of ecosystem of digital tools. What's nice about Teams is that it has our chat, all of our teams, kind of like your Slack or your G Chat or what have you, is right there. We have file share. You can embed in given streams or spaces that you set out for a given work group or product. You can embed things like Power BI dashboards or Microsoft Forms or other. Basically, Teams is a really beautiful, elegant way that it basically created the virtual office space, where around your real office space, you have things on your whiteboard and you have big community whiteboards and you put up posters and things on the bulletin board and you chat with your colleague across the way verbally. All of that really comes together. And so the idea, and again, a couple of folks brought this up before, and this is very much still a work in progress for us. Blake and I are kind of the ones who are dragging this, but the idea is more and more we just nudge people to spend most of their workday in this virtual environment, and then you start to get that natural cadence that you had in the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, instead of Zach and I sitting back to back to each other and having conversations, when we can just see if each other are available, have a quick call, share screen, talk through kind of a frustration we're having, and then usually one of us can kind of help fix the other's frustration for that little point in time. And it just becomes very, very fluid and very natural.
Yep. Yeah, and then I think the kind of closing thought we had for you all is basically, we know that standing up a brand new virtual tech environment for a big team, that can be kind of intimidating for a lot of folks. It can seem hard to get started. And so I think our sort of tip or strategy there is rely on a couple of early adopters to build out and curate a space and do a bit of hand holding to get the rest of the team. And that's kind of the role Blake and I played in. And so far it seems to have worked.
Cool. Zach, Blake, thank you so much. It was really helpful to see it in real time. And I understand that this is part of just the government version of Microsoft Teams, right? Like pretty much standard. That was one question we had in the chat. And we'll see if people have other questions here in just a few minutes. We want to thank Zach and Blake for their share out from Denver. We're going to now, well, Shannon, I'll let you introduce our next special guest.
Unmute yourself. So we have Lisa Miller with us. I think I saw Lisa, and she's from the City County Planning Department. She's going to talk about her experience with her team using Jamboard.
Thanks, Shannon. Hi, everyone. It was great to hear about y'all's use with Microsoft Teams. For those of you locally, our team started using that and SharePoint really heavily just before the malware attack that we all experienced, and so had kind of a jump on other folks getting into virtual work environment and recovering a lot of our data. So it's great to see how y'all are using that that tool as well. So I'm going to talk about Jamboard today as a Google product. Just a little background. I work with a team, closely with a team of 5 folks, including me. We're trying to create a new comprehensive plan for Durham County. And when we started work on this project last year, almost everyone on our team was new to the team, several of whom were new to the department. So we've been spending a lot of time over the last year trying to figure out how we best work together, both while we were physically in City Hall and then trying to continue that collaboration virtually while we've been working from home for the last few months. So this tool is one that we tried using in a meeting with some residents, trying to capture ideas that were shared in real time, display them for folks to kind of see, react to, and build off of. And we didn't find that it worked very well in that setting, so we kind of set it aside as not a particularly useful tool. But we have spent the last month and a half doing pretty in-depth qualitative data analysis around resident input that we received last fall and winter. Erin Parrish, who's on in the meeting today as well, introduced this in our work with her on this data analysis as a different function for this tool to help us with our work. And it's worked really great for the way that we're using it now. So it's been interesting to see how it has functioned well. So essentially it's a virtual whiteboard. There is a free version, which is the version we're using. So the constraints, some of those may go away when you pay for a version. I believe there's a paid version. But it's a virtual whiteboard. You can draw, you can add text, images, and the thing that we've primarily used it for is using it for a sticky note board. One file in Jamboard can have up to 20 of these sheets like are shown on the screen here, but 20 is the limit. So for our purposes, we used the Jamboard for team members to individually populate sticky notes with resident input before collaboration sessions. And then when we were in a session together, we were able to cluster notes to identify patterns in what residents were talking about, to start identifying themes that will build into objectives around what residents need for our future in Durham to go into our comprehensive plan. So some of the functions were not super intuitive to me, at least. There are lots of Q&A opportunities to find on the internet, as with most things. A few cons that we noticed. The biggest thing by far is that you can't select multiple sticky notes to move them at once. This was primarily an issue when we were trying to move one cluster from one board to another. But obviously, something that you can still move them all one by one, but it just takes a little bit longer. So there are, like I mentioned, there's a 20 slides limit per file, and there's also a character limit on the sticky notes of 171 characters. You are able to paste more information in there, but it limits what's displayed. And we've noticed some glitches that happen with trying to edit what's in the sticky note once you go over that limit. As far as downloading or sharing out the information, has a couple of different options for exporting, all the boards or just one through PDF or an image file, but it's not, the kind of data itself isn't exported in a way that the, easily imported into Word or Excel or things like that. I asked my teammates for some of their reflections just to share out with y'all. Folks really liked that we were able to collaborate in that space together. The colors are fun. It was generally easy to use and has worked better than some of the other tools we'd tried. It's really easy to group clusters of information, especially compared to trying to work in different Word documents. it's tactile and is a quick way of sorting information and seeing patterns. And it's been good for what we've been doing, but has some limitations, and it's free. So those are some of the reflections from the team. That I'm happy to answer questions about that. I think Shannon also asked if I would share just really briefly another tool that our team is using. For any of you who are in the software development world or who know people who are, you may be familiar with the Agile framework. Our team has been using the Jira software to apply this framework to project management for this comprehensive plan project. It's been really helpful, both because it's a really big project, it's an important project, and it's got a lot of us working on it, and has been really helpful in our work from home environment. We've been using it since about June of this year. It's a free software, but creates a collaborative space for us to help chunk out our work on this really big project into manageable pieces, assign that work out to different folks on the team, and then see it progress on a visual sprint board from to do to in progress to project manager review and done, and gives space to create a list of upcoming work and new assignments in the backlog. So just wanted to mention that real quick as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. I love the Jamboard example. I think it was a good reminder for me also to not just throw out a tool if it doesn't work for one context, but you might be able to come back to it. I think we're good on time, so we're gonna, if people have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But we're gonna go now to Emily Road in back in the City of Public Works. She used sticky notes and whiteboard, old-fashioned style.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Rohde and I work in Public Works at the City of Durham in the Stormwater Division. And I just wanted to kind of get old school with the sticky notes. So I'm a really tactile person, a tactile learner. I know about some of the technology, but I don't always love to, especially in this time when my brain's already overloaded, really learn a ton of new stuff. And I just so happen to have a whiteboard that my 3-year-old likes to mess around on, and a lot of sticky notes because I missed the IdeaLab so much with sticky notes. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how I used the journey mapping process to create a presentation for a conference that I was invited to speak at. And basically, I wanted to lay out kind of a rough draft of what my presentation would look like. So I basically tried to figure out what's the mile high view, like what am I trying to convey to the people that are attending the conference. And one of the great things about sticky notes, and I heard Lisa talking about only being able to move one at a time, depending on how many hands you have or whatever you're using, you can move a whole bunch around at once. So it was really great to be able to kind of organize my presentation this way and use the format of journey mapping to do that, because I think it follows that format really nicely, kind of looking at what's the problem, what are the reasons that people might not buy in to your idea that you're trying to convince them is a great idea, and how can you move them past that, how can you set them up for success. So it was a really good way to just kind of lay it out at a really low tech way. And this was something that I first learned when I participated in our Idea Starter program at the city, which we got some really great ideas, but the journey mapping was kind of one of my favorites because I felt like I could really use that in my daily work, and it didn't have to be super high tech and super complicated.
Cool, thanks, Emily. That's fantastic. We appreciate all y'all sharing, and I'm old school too, and like that's part of our point, right? Is that we don't have to be all virtual or all in person. We can go back and forth, and we can mix and match. And again, at least for me, the vision is that in the new world, right, that we have some combination of kind of a hybrid approach. We've got time for a handful of questions, and so you can either I can't see your hands raised because there's 90 of you, which is fantastic. But if you want to type your questions in the chat, we can read them back to our speakers, and please direct them to either Zach and Blake at Denver, Lisa with City County Planning, or Emily with City of Durham Public Works. Or you can turn your mic off, or mic on rather, and just ask your question, and make sure you let us know who you're directing it to. Or it could be a general question for all three organizations.
I have a question about to Lisa. Were you able to download all that information, or, you know what I mean? You had all those Post-it notes. Like, did you get something in an email or something with all those responses?
So coming out of Jamboard?
Right.
Yeah, so that's where it either has the option for you to export it only has the options to export as PDF or as an image file. Luckily for us, like this is resident input. This is a data spreadsheet where we're taking and copying and pasting into sticky notes in order to move them around and try and identify where we're seeing patterns. So it wasn't as much of an issue, but I could see that being an issue if you're generating information. And in the initial space, we tried to use the tool, which was this meeting with different residents and brainstorming ideas around engagement. Then exporting that information in a usable fashion was a little more challenging.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for the question, Sherry. Drew from Durham County has a question for Zach and Blake. Zach, you're gonna love this one. Drew,
I read it.
You probably already seen it. And I'm gonna quote Drew directly. How have the stodgier, these are Drew's words, how have the stodgier older leaders in Denver reacted to your new, more visual methods of tracking issues and tasks? And do they work in the platforms too, or are they just getting the information from you?
Yeah, Drew, great question. Blake and I were actually literally talking about this today. Definitely some of both. There have definitely been some of our senior leadership who've really dived in and loved this and found that it helps keep you organized. Others, it's much more about it helps us keep our information organized and our thoughts organized. And then, as you say, we kind of deliver them information. But what I think is definitely the case, especially from our most senior leadership over here in safety, even though our executive director probably isn't using this a ton, the fact that he knows that that's how we're organizing our thoughts and running our meetings and advancing our meetings is big. Like for him, he knows that he doesn't need more accountability from us because we are using these tools. And at any time, he or his deputies could dive in and look at that. And so I don't think he really needs to be using it for it still to be effective.
Thanks, Zach. I don't know if the other speakers want to just talk about kind of how you've managed the people management of this, because that's a whole nother layer, obviously, to bringing in these questions. Fred Raven, hey man, it's been a while. Hope you're doing okay. Fred's got a question for Lisa. If he wants to unmute himself.
Hey, Lisa, I definitely liked a lot of that information that I saw. And one is a question and one is just kind of a comment. The question is, if you can export that information to a PDF, a lot of times you can either, literally copy and paste from a PDF sometimes, or you can actually get a like the Adobe that allows you to convert from PDF back to Word. So I don't know if that could be beneficial to you all in the future. But I did have a question about the way that I guess you were saying that you were able to have multiple sheets and you were able to have, basically all these sticky notes. And I believe someone in the comments already commented on it, but I'm wondering how many different colors it allows you, because sometimes what I've seen people do, or at least like when we've done it in real life, you kind of use the different colors so you can kind of have a quantitative approach to the amount of responses that you're getting within one area. And then maybe you can still use that export information that you're using for that more qualitative approach when you're looking at each piece of information individually. So I was just wondering if any of that would be beneficial to you, or if you could just share some insight about like maybe the limitations that they have on the amount of pages you can use or colors that are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the suggestion around how to get that data into a more usable form. It's definitely helpful for thinking about future formats where we're not bringing it in from an existing data source. The way that it's set up, you have 5 different color options. So as you're adding content to a sticky note, you choose what color you want it to be. We've used it some for trying to use one color for quotes that were coming from residents, another color for observations that we were making about patterns we were seeing. So that's been really helpful, as well as it's just more interesting to look at. And yeah, as Shannon put in the chat, you can have up to 20 pages in a single Jamboard file. And we found in 1 or 2 instances, we were running up on that total. So we just created another file to start working in again. So it's just kind of how you chunk the information out to work within those limitations. Something we're happy to do because it was free.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Fred, thanks for the question. And Lisa, thank you for your thoughts there. We're going to keep rolling because we want to get you guys into your breakout groups. But again, you're going to get the slides, and all of our fantastic case study speakers have their email addresses in the slides. And so, be unafraid to send them a note and talk to them and get a little bit more information on what they did. Okay, so we've come to our activity. Let me explain how this is going to work. So remember the Padlet board from earlier? And I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but it sounds like it was pretty engaging and people enjoyed it. We want you to return to it, but then we're going to build on a Jamboard as well. So we're going to mix and match 2 things today. So the group project is, we want you to answer this prompt. How might we operationalize wellness in the city and the county? And we know we got people from other organizations, like the city of High Point is here, and people from across the country. And so you can apply this basically when you get into your breakouts, pick an organization that you're working on behalf. But we want you to pull from the Padlet ideas that you posted, and then pick one, or maybe you combine several that really speak to your group and flesh that thing out into a concept that either the city or county could use, or whatever organization, again, you're building on behalf of, could use to promote wellness among employees right now in this crazy time of COVID. There's no wrong way to do this. And if you get stuck, again, look back at the Padlet board. Maybe you find some themes and patterns in there. Maybe you combine 2 or 3 ideas into a mega idea, super idea. And don't feel limited by the Padlet board. Use it for inspiration, like in the spirit of brainstorming and ideation. But don't feel like you have to pick something from that board. If your group decides you want to develop another concept, then that's cool. Again, there's no wrong way to do this. Then you're going to go to the Jamboard link that Sherry's about to post, or maybe she already has in the chat. And you're going to go to the Jamboard number that lines up with your Zoom breakout group number. So for example, breakout group number 9 would scroll across at the top of the Jamboard to Jamboard number 9. And then as a group, you're going to use the Jamboard to flesh out your wellness idea. And so one thing you could consider doing is you could use the left-hand side for brainstorming and to get some initial thoughts on paper. And then the right side you could use to develop your idea. It's really up to you. Let me show you how it's going to look. So again, use the Padlet up here, and you got links, should have links in the chat to both of those. You're going to use the Padlet for inspiration, and then as a group, you're going to move to the Jamboard to create a concept. There are Post-it notes. You can put photos, images, text. Again, think about how you're going to pull from the lessons that we've tried to share today as you build your work. So I'm going to go ahead. You're going to have 25 minutes to do this. And then we're going to come back and see if we have a couple of volunteers who want to share out their creation. Again, we're also going to have time at the end for reflection. If you have questions, there is a way I think that you can alert me on Zoom, and you can invite me into your room, and I'll try to help you out. Again, have fun and think about how you can apply the concepts we learned today. So bear with me 1 second while I send you all into your breakout rooms, and I'll call you back in about 25 minutes or so. All right, have fun.
Hey, Michael, just trying to get where I need to go.
Hey, Peggy, let me see if I
Try
can.
clicking on it again. I was going to copy and paste it, but that didn't work. So I'll just.
Do you need to get sent to a room?
I was in a room, but I wasn't in Padlet, so I was trying to figure out how to do that.
Okay.
Do you copy and paste
I will,
it? Or just,
I will send you, let me send you the link.
okay, I see it in the chat.
Okay, then you can just copy paste it from the chat.
Okay, I think that's Jamboard. Let's see, there's Padlet. Okay, let me try that again and see what happens. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, I'm in here.
Peggy, do you need me to send you to a room?
I'm on the Padlet site, but I don't know where. Am I looking for like a number? It was in 14, I think, but I don't see any options for that here.
Yeah, you're room 14, but I want to make sure you're supposed to go to breakout room 14.
Yeah. So I'm in the Padlet site, but I don't see anything to choose a room. I don't mind asking dumb questions because I want to.
No, you're fine. I'm gonna send you what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send you to room 15. Okay, so you should get a message in just a second that will send you there. Do you see something pop up?
In the chat, I'm assuming. Let's see.
If you open Zoom,
yeah,
you should have a message that sends you the breakout room 15, and you just have to click join.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Hey, Michael, it's Rebecca. I got kicked out of Zoom for some reason.
Yeah, let me send you to a room.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry for the delay. Becky, you need any help?
Yeah, this is not working for me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm not going to delay everybody else. It's just.
Well, they're there. They're in the room. Let me. I'm going to try again. to send you to a room.
I'm probably not going to the right place somehow.
Okay, so I'm gonna send you back to 14, and you should have, if your Zoom is open, you should get a message that pops up and it says, would you like to join breakout room 14?
Okay, I got that before and I went to it, but I wasn't in Padlet. I couldn't.
Yeah, Padlet is a separate thing, so we just need to get you to, once we get you to the breakout room, then you're okay.
I thought we were supposed to join it through Padlet, and I got there.
No.
I can't open Padlet, and they said we'll go back and get it. And so that's what I was doing. All right.
Oh, okay.
All right. Send me to the corner.
So once you get there, can you get the link to Padlet?
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you. I'll
All
wait.
right,
for your
thanks. All right, we're starting to come back. I am going to share my screen, and I'm not picking on group 4 at all. In fact, I'll move to just a random one. All right, we got about 50 people back. We're starting to come back. I hope you guys enjoy that. One of the fun things as the facilitator is that I get to dive bomb into your rooms and ask you questions, and that's
We
pretty
saw
fun.
you. We saw you.
I know. Hey, Constance, it's good to hear your voice. Glad you're here. All right. So, does anyone want to share? We've got time for a couple share outs. If you want to tell me, if you want to turn your mic on and tell me your group number, if we can get a couple. I saw Bring Your Pet to Work Day. I saw digital yoga. I saw all kinds of cool stuff. Who wants to do a real quick report out on their concept and what it might look like?
I said, Michael, I'll go.
Hey, Willa, thanks. Willa, what number were you?
We were 13. A lucky 13.
That's right. Let's see. I got to join Willa's group for about 90 seconds. All right. Take it away.
Okay. So I had the pleasure of being in the group with Mindy and Jeannie and Rebecca. And so we discussed a recipe swap and even taking it to the point of maybe having a chef or a dietitian that could cook with us at a specified time. We recognize a food theme. It might be pumpkins or apples or something that's in season. And this is something that the city and the county could work together on. And the recipes are sent out 2 weeks in advance along with the equipment list. And that way it gives the people time to get to the grocery store. And then we cook together. And if they don't cook it at that point in time, then they can cook at a later time and then find a way for us to share the pictures of what they cooked.
I love that concept. And Willa, this is for you or your team. It begs the question: is there a particular meal that you would that you'd share with the city and county?
Oh, I don't think you want me to answer that. I have those weird things, and so you got these ideas flowing, and I was like, this is something we really could do.
I'm sure you got something to contribute to the virtual recipe. Yeah,
definitely.
Very cool. All right, thanks, Willa. Anyone else want to share?
Michael, this is Drew. I'll share from group 7.
All right, I'll scroll over to yours, Drew. Thanks.
Ours is sort of covered in that top left larger blue sticky, but as we were talking about this, I was recalling a couple of years ago, the city and the county city and county of Durham had sort of a gentle fitness competition where you had a team of people that you were kind of grouped with, and you could post activities. And we were thinking of that, but more in terms of wellness activities, right? So that you could not only kind of get some positive reinforcement for the wellness, any of a broad range of wellness activities that you were doing, but you could see what other members of your little team were doing and comment on their stuff and encourage them and see what recipes Willa was cooking and ask her about them and so forth, and thought it might be kind of a fun way of really reinforcing just giving people positive feedback loops, and also a lot of ideas for the kinds of things that they could be doing that other people were really getting good vibes out of doing.
Very cool. Thanks, Drew and group 7, and thanks, Willa and group 13. If you guys want to post in the chat, give me 1 or 2 words on how you found that activity to be. You know, was it enjoyable? Was it kind of tricky? Like, what was that experience like? Just describe that in a couple words in the chat. We're curious what you made of it. I'm gonna bring my slides back, and while you guys post your thoughts on that activity, we're gonna go back. Yeah, so does anyone want to share quickly, like, and you can turn your mics off, but if anyone, or on rather, but were there any particular challenges that you had to work through as a team as you worked with this virtual whiteboard? Anyone want to share anything, any experiences?
Hi, this is Tobin. It was great. I'll definitely say at the beginning, there were a lot of us like moving each other's things around and stuff and just trying to figure out who was doing what. And it was all anonymous, whatever animal. So you couldn't really tell what was going on at first. We had to figure that out.
That's a great point. I guess without being signed in to Google, that's one of the great things about Jamboard, but it's also the downside is in some cases, maybe the anonymity. Thanks for that share out, Tobin. Anybody else? Also look at the, Drew said, stop moving Tobin's stuff around. That's funny. Cool.
I'll talk about it.
Yeah, hey,
I've
Sean.
used Jamboard in the past. Like, it's not necessarily intuitive to everybody to own browser and simultaneously have someone share the screen. Like, that's the way I found it works most effectively, is that you're all looking at one shared screen, but you're also playing with it simultaneously in another space. And then you can see like icons that move stuff around. So you also have a better sense of it. But then you're sharing a collective, like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing there. And I can post my own stuff. We kept falling back into this tendency of like, people would say ideas and I found myself writing them up. And it was like, no, you should be posting your own stuff. So I think we struggled with creating some energy around that.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, no, thanks, Sean. Definitely good points. Well, thanks, guys and gals. Thanks everyone for being part of this. We are coming to the end of our session, but again, IdeaLab, it's all about enjoying the time and learning, and then really being intentional about thinking, how are we going to spend this forward? What are we going to do different when we go back to the office or the virtual workspace or whatever that is? We've got again, that reflection sheet that's been posted in the chat, and I'll ask Sherry to repost it for us, and want you to just take a couple minutes and continue filling it out. You can also do it after the session, but we really want you to think about what's going to be, how are you going to use this information? Is there a particular group that you meet with or project you're working on where you could make your meetings more interactive, dynamic, visual? And what's your first step that you're going to take? What's your first action, and when are you going to do it by? It's that kind of personal accountability piece. Really want you to think about that. You guys are models for your organizations and your departments, and so here's really a great way to spin out and model some different type of behavior in terms of collaboration. So, and if you want to share in the chat, like what you're going to do, feel free. We'd like to hear it. And I think we all get inspired by others. And again, there's no pressure to do that. This is a personal reflection sheet. We're also going to make sure that the link to our evaluation is posted in the chat. It only takes about a minute, and it's really helpful. It just lets us know how we're doing, if we're meeting the mark, and it's a chance for us to get better by incorporating your feedback. And we do every time after IdeaLab to design the next session. So please.
Real quick, Michael, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt. Isn't that rude?
Hey.
Real quick, I sent 2 links. Use the second one. My first one was off. So I just sent the other one. for the evaluation. And really, you guys, you know, since we've gone virtual, we get great numbers, but we get really bad numbers of people filling out the evaluation. So I really encourage everyone. It will take you a minute. Just click it, fill it out. We really, really appreciate it because we really rely on that for our next session. So,
and feel free to take longer than a minute if you want.
You can take longer than a minute. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't take long. Please go ahead and open it up, and you know, before you sign off, just go ahead and fill it out for us. It really helps us. So we're so grateful to all of you for being part of this community, and continue to share this opportunity. We'll be back, I'm sure, in another couple months. And please keep spreading the word of this forum to others. As I mentioned at the top, we're going to send you all the slides and some handouts via email. If you happen to get this invite forwarded to you and we don't have your email address, please either email me, I'll put my email address in the chat, or you can put your email address in the chat, just so that we can make sure that you're added to our distribution list and we can get you all the information. Shannon, Sherry, and I also have put some other resources that we may have alluded to throughout the session that may build on some of the things that we talked about today, like the IDEO design kit and collaboration superpowers list of various digital tools. There's a lot of good stuff there. We hope you check it out. All right, and I'll put my email in here. Let's see. In terms of closing thoughts, Shannon, Sherry, anything else that you guys want to add?
I'll just say that this was my first time collaborating on one of these, and it was so fun. I learned so much in preparing things for today and learning from you guys. So this was a success in my book. Thank you.
Yeah, it was fun. And some of you might have missed Natalie because she was not here, but Natalie's at home with a new little baby, but she'll be at our next IdeaLab. I'm sure, hopefully with a picture she can show you all. So she had a baby boy, gosh, about a month ago. So that's great news.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're very excited for Natalie, and she'll be back carrying the torch in November. And again, big thanks to my co-conspirators, Shannon and Sherry, for just great work. It was really fun putting this one together.